All right, this is a quick little tutorial on your drawing exercise that's included along with, I think the drawing one's first and then the painting. But so you're going to have three sort of examples to do. This is the first one, and this is going to be sort of an upside down drawing, and then I'll run through the other two fairly quickly. But for the most part, what you're going to do with this drawing is I want you to do the whole drawing upside down. And I want you to do nothing but look at the structure of the lines and where they flow and where they sit. And you don't have to flip it over. Matter of fact, I don't want you to flip it over the whole time. And all you're doing is drawing shapes. That's all we're doing is shapes. And so fill in every box and every shape how you want it. Just follow the lines. It's kind of like a line contour drawing, sort of like the Matisse drawing, which was earlier in the semester in the art appreciation book. But don't worry if it's not supposed to be something that is perfectly ideal. You may have a head that looks a little bit smaller on the body. There may be areas where you handled everything really quite well. I know that a lot of students sometimes have problems in the area of the hands. I can understand that. I wouldn't get too bogged down in those. There's a lot of overlap. I wouldn't worry too much about them. I would focus more on the lines of the coat and the lapels and just the structure of how he looks in terms of, matching what you have going on next to you. And again, I'm doing this fairly quickly. I want you to spend more time on it than I'm spending. But right now I'm just kind of trying to rough it out. Fairly crudely, I might add. And so just pay attention to what you're doing in terms of the line quality and how you're going about doing it and sort of what it's supposed to look like. I'm pretty sure the origin of this drawing is, I forget the name of the individual, but I'm pretty sure it's a Picasso drawing that he did. But it's a good technique in terms of sort of the drawing upside down type style of drawing. And the reason for this exercise is for you not to think of this as a person, but to think of this as a series of lines. And once you match up the lines, then the person will come out of this. A lot of times we look at stuff and we say, well, I'm going to draw a person. I know what a person looks like, and we don't pay attention to the person we are drawing. And so consequently, we end up with a drawing that doesn't look anything like the actual individual. And that's because our brain sort of takes over and says, I think we know what we're doing. And so it turns out not to work out like you perhaps had hoped. But the idea of this exercise is to spend more time looking at this than you do this. And I'm not saying that you cannot rotate it just to sort of look at your proportions, but I want you to get as much done as possible. And, I've kind of overshot this shoulder here. I'll bring it in just a little bit. This lapel may not be quite right. This lapel is going up a little too high. I don't mind if you have softer lines in between and you just kind of start to darken as you start to refine the figure. But for the most part, this is sort of, I'm doing this in, roundabout. I'm looking at the video ticker here. This is about 4 minutes, but I would rather y'all spend about, 30 minutes or so on it to get kind of the figure, which one to look like. All right, the next exercise is, and I said you can do 2 out of 3 of these, so you don't have to do this one. You can do all 3 if you want. The next exercise is sort of to create a abstract using just these three shapes right here. 1, 2, 3. And don't worry about it. All these papers are going to have a section that says comments. That was for when I did this as an in-class exercise. Don't worry about the comments section. So here we're talking about how can we create like an abstract design. You know, I can use like a half circle. I don't have to use the whole circle. I can put like a smaller circle in between it. I could come over, I could divide it up, and I could do like a square here and have my square drop here. And then I can, you know, if I wanted to use, I want you to use all three shapes if you can. If I wanted to use the triangle, I could put a triangle here, or I could maybe, let's see, maybe I could do something like this, but that's got a little too much balance in it. But what you can do is, once you drop all these three shapes in, then you can sort of tone areas that you think should be dark. You know, as opposed to areas that can be, you know, like a little bit lighter tone, and then areas that are really like super dark. It's just about breaking up space and sort of creating a design with what you're doing. We can go ahead and darken this one up if we want to, and then we can leave these two. This one needs to be just about a middle value, a little bit darker, and then this can be a little bit lighter. But what I don't want is things like this. I mean, you can do this in repetition, but if you're going to do this, make sure you vary your sizes. Like a smaller one, a mid-size, and maybe a larger one to give me some sense of depth about what you're doing. You can do, you know, you can do almost a triangle pattern, reverse pattern. So if I'm doing this, I've got a triangle here, a triangle here, and a triangle here, and I've reversed the sequence of patterns. And, you know, you could block it off with maybe the square here, and, you know, you can put a circle here, and there's any way you can do in terms of how you want to divide up the space. But just fill all three boxes and just sort of create an abstract design on this section. And the final section is just sort of a tonal drawing, which this is more about. It's sort of like the first drawing, but it's more about tonality within the drawing. And it's sort of about, you know, creating those shapes. And anytime I start a drawing like this, I'll start off very crude with my drawing. I don't try to, you know, get too much detail going on. You know, I just try to sketch it out, get everything like I sort of want it in its place. The lapel, and maybe the shadow area. There's another lapel sort of jutting out right here. And I'm going pretty quick with these things because I'm sort of running out of time on my video. But the main point of this exercise is to start off really loose, and then you can come in and you can sort of refine what it is that you're doing in terms of the facial structure. You know, where the ear sits, the eyes, you've got an eye that sits kind of right here, and then you've got another eye that sits kind of right in this area, and then you have the nose come down here, and then the mouth. Now, once I start to sort of map that out, actually my eyes are going to be more like this shape. They're kind of sort of on a down tilt, so kind of like that. But what I want you to understand about this exercise is the reason that I've got it looking like it does is because this is a study in a series of shapes and shading. How we block out the forms of the face to give us depth and dimension, and how these shapes tie into one another. We've got this shape on the side of the nose here, And then we got this socket sort of working here on this side with the eye. And then we have this nice shadow being cast, sort of rim lit around the head and coming up like this and sort of bending down. Like this. But this is, again, like I said, this is more of a tonal exercise in what we're doing and creating those sort of shadow shapes. So once I get it to this stage, then I can go in, and if I start working real dark with what I'm doing, then you sort of start to see these facial features and things start popping out. The hair is going to, of course, be much darker on the rest of the face and these shadow areas, the cheek, and then especially underneath the nose, you're going to have a cast shadow, which is dark. And fortunately for us, we've got a beard, which sort of ties into the mouth, underneath. And it starts to come up this way, and then it just sort of dives out. And then this eye comes like this. And it sort of ties in, going back in this direction as well. So this is just sort of helping you to understand how shape makes a difference with the facial structure and the tonality. A nose is never, it's a series of shapes and shadow shapes. How it bends, how it turns up at the bridge, dark stuff, dark tones go in and recede, light tones come out. And how the face just sort of starts to stand up and look like it should. Darker edges in some areas. Of course, like I said, we got this shadow happening underneath the face, underneath the hat. I got a scarf. These are more of, this is more along the lines of the doodle discussion question. I just didn't have any doodles laying around, so I just uploaded the drawings that I had. But what we have is we see strong directional light coming from this side, hitting the face, creating these nice sort of form shadows that sort of move in and out. Of course, again, like I said, the hair is going to be a little bit darker. The ear is somewhere in this general area. That can be kind of abstracted. And the tip of the nose is a little bit too, a little bit pointier than that. And like I said, the mouth just kind of ties right into the beard in terms of how this looks structurally. And you can play with the shape of the eyes. You can do different things and say, well, you know what, it's more of a squint. He's got more of a squint, so he's showing really too much eye. And the eyebrow kind of does this. Looks a little bit sadder as opposed to serious. And so this is just an exercise in sort of nailing down your shadow shapes. I'm going to do a real hard line on this so you can see how this shape ties into this. The cheek ties into the mustache, mustache into the mouth, and then the beard, and then everything just sort of flows down from there. So these are the three drawing exercises, and you can pick 2 of them to do. If you want to do all 3 of them, that works fine as well.